shares of multinational pharmaceutical companies have surged in the Indian market, even as their domestic counterparts are ailing. Darshan Mehta is standing by to explain why MNCs seem to have a bit of an edge. Darshan, good morning. Why do you say that?
Yeah, so I think a week ago we had done a comparison on, which that people are moving their money from plain generics to hospitals to MNC, and MNC certainly was the one. And I was surprised to see a stock which actually we had ignored last time was AstraZeneca Pharma. It's almost doubled in the last 1 year. It's not a small company by any chance. So if you take a look at which are the MNCs which have done well, so AstraZeneca has almost doubled. Abbott we've spoken about in detail, it's up 77%. Pfizer is up 50%. Glaxo and Sanofi are up 8%. And look at the Nifty Pharma Index, it's down 10%. Novartis has always been an underperformer in the Indian market, hasn't done well even on financial term. That is down 5%. But even that has outperformed the Nifty Pharma Index. Now, what is working for the Indian pharma company, for the MNC companies that are working in India? Recently, the big change that happened was the fact that the government exempted patent drugs from price control for the past 5 years. So this gave a big boost for the MNC pharma companies, and they started getting in a lot of their products in here. Now, the shift has actually turned more towards patented products, and the growth, if you see, is 16 to 17% for this kind of category, which is big, and that is why MNCs have started to actually get in their drugs. Now, what a lot of them have done is initially it used to take anywhere between close to a year and a half to get their products in. Now they're able to get their product within a few months in India, and they've done with a dual pricing strategy. For most of the drugs that come here, they have a cheaper price in the local market for patented products to garner that market share, and that is where a lot of these MNC companies are benefiting. Now, one thing that they focus on is power brands. We spoke about how Abbott is doing that, how Glaxo is doing that, how Pfizer is doing that. They're looking at power brands and looking to build their brands, and that is why if you see the AIOCD data, some of these companies have actually gained significant amount of market share, and they're looking to launch significant amount of drugs from the parent pipeline, and the timeline of launches has come down drastically, and that is what is also helping them. They have significant presence in the underpenetrated therapies, and that is also benefiting them because there is no other alternative here. The other part is that they are playing a catch-up. For almost years and years, MNC pharmas have underperformed the Indian market. So what you saw was in FY19, especially because of GST, MNC pharma grew at 8.5%, while the domestic pharma market grew at 10%. They've managed to match it in the first half of FY20, given the fact that of the new launches have actually come in. And the market share is significant now. So if you take a look at the 6 or 7 listed companies, they have a market share of 15% in the Indian domestic market, and that is where the valuation is. And you take the unlisted company, the number could be anywhere between 20 to 25%. So MNCs now have a significant amount of share in the Indian market. Abbott is 6.1%. It is only after Sun Pharma, which is number 1, and they got there because of the acquisition of Ranbaxy. So Abbott has a significant amount of market share there. The other thing is that these companies are clean, balance sheets are extremely strong. I spoke to a couple of analysts, and they said that there's no other alternative here because these balance sheets are clean. They look at companies which have significant amount of presence in the domestic market. Now look at the cash to net worth ratio. Novartis has 88%, Abbott has 85% cash, AstraZeneca has 70%. So the balance sheet is extremely strong, debt free, high promoter shareholding. I was speaking to an analyst from an MNC who didn't want to speak to the media, but he's saying most of these MNCs have shareholding to the tune of 75%. And like what a couple of these MNCs have done, they've gone private because of the regulatory issues, and there is always this hope trade of delisting, and that is why also a lot of these MNCs are preferred here. Now valuations no doubt are expensive, trading at much higher valuation. AstraZeneca is trading at 88 times, which is far more expensive, but Abbott at 39 times, Sanofi at 33 times, Pfizer at 32 times. Novartis has no analyst coverage, so we don't have that. But they're trading at rich valuations. And I was speaking to an analyst yesterday, and he says that it's fine, valuations are rich, but there is no other alternative. People right now, given the fact that there is trouble in the export market, there is competition, people are looking to get money into cleaner companies where there are power brands, and these MNCs are now focusing on power brands, and that is why valuations probably won't matter because because that is where the money will go in, because a debt-free company, clean balance sheet company. He also said that, if Cipla had more focus on the domestic market, probably the valuation would have been much higher. So a few years ago, the theme was export. I think the theme over the past few quarters has been the domestic market.
Okay, two questions, Darshan. One, I heard you mention that even if we combine the unlisted names as well in the MNC space, then the market share could be as high as 20-25%.
Yeah.
This has moved up quite substantially in the last 2-3 years.
It has, because they've been gaining significant amount of market share. I think one company which we haven't included is listed is Merck India, but that was acquired by Procter & Gamble Hygiene. So that will come under the name of Procter & Gamble Hygiene, but now it's more of a conglomerate. So that has significant amount of market share. There is Boeing BI, which has increased their share significantly. And remember, all these MNCs also have unlisted subsidiaries.
Yes.
So the parent, let's say an AstraZeneca or an Abbott will have an Abbott India Limited, and they will also have an Abbott Healthcare, which is the unlisted company, which also does business here. So if you take all that, the share pie increases significantly.
And it's moved up quite substantially.
Yeah, and the change that, I read a couple of times is that now that these parent companies are realizing that they are moving, first what they used to do was, and there was a problem where they used to move business through the unlisted subsidiary. That was there. Now the trend is changing. The new launches that are happening, at least that happened in Pfizer, the ones that are happening in the listed companies. So that is where, there is shareholder value creation that's happening.
Okay, just one follow-up, Darshan, very quickly. If the Indian arms or Indian companies are facing these FDA issues, how is it that the MNCs are not quite doing that? I mean, is there something specific that is ailing the Indian companies vis-a-vis what's happening to these MNCs?
So the key difference is that the US FDA is basically for the export market. So whichever companies are there are exporting. The MNCs have their own businesses there, so that
they don't export out of India.
So they don't export out.
None of the MNCs export anything out of India.
I think only Glaxo, if I'm not sure, exports a part of it. But Glaxo, Novartis, I'm sorry, I don't have that number. But all the others are pure play. 100% of their businesses in India, and they are subject to Indian laws, not the US FDA.
Got it. Okay, Darshan, thanks so much for putting that into perspective. Well, MNCs have the edge. You can clearly see, aside of the fact that they've gained market share, the valuations tell you a story. That valuation picture is just so rich. This must be, we talk about FMCG valuations being high. I think these names probably counter the kind of valuations that some of the FMCG names trade in a meaningful way. But quite a very interesting valuation chart, really, from those pharma companies. Thanks, Darshan. Thanks so much for putting that into perspective.